You navigated the maze. It should be good by Sunday, I imagine. It'd be just up and even like the other one there. So I can't imagine this takes more than a couple days to do. We're looking at 1 Samuel chapter 18 this evening. And before we get started, let's open with a word of prayer. Y'all bow your heads with me. Father God, we thank you for this safe haven in a fallen world, to be able to come into your house and open your word and fellowship with brothers and sisters in Christ, and to be touched by the power of your holy word. Lord, we ask that you would move among us this evening, God, that you would open our hearts and our minds, that's what's said, what is heard, what is read, would build us up, would make us better Christians, would be used to sanctify your children. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so a poor country farmer walked into a really fancy church one evening, and he asked to speak with the pastor. And a few minutes after waiting in the waiting room there, this stately bald man in pristine robes and sashes he had a collection of gold rings on his hand. He came out and he said, what exactly can I do for you, my child? And the man said, well, I don't know the word I'm looking for. I'm looking to hire or charter, lease, rent even. I don't know. One of them, fancy groups of robed up singing people, the church singers. And the pastor looked at him in this kind of condescending manner, honestly, and he said, child, I believe you mean a choir. And he says, all right, fine, Mr. Fancy Pants Church Pastor. I need to acquire a group of those fancy robed up church singers. Well done. There we go. I've only got one more in the list here. I've got to start hunting through the internet now. Y'all don't know how difficult this is, the struggles. So 1 Samuel 18. We remember 1 Samuel 17, where that left off, because, man, that's a fun chapter to go through. That is David and Goliath. David took armor from Saul, and he said, I can't use all this stuff. I haven't proven it. I've never fought in this stuff before. Don't worry about it. I've killed a lion. I've killed a bear. God will deliver this uncircumcised Philistine heathen into my hand, just like he delivered the bear and the lion into my hand. And he went and he took 5 stones from the brook, and he ran out there towards Goliath, put a stone in his sling and slung it and sunk it into his forehead. Goliath collapsed to the ground. The Philistine army is looking on in shock as David runs over on top of the body, draws Goliath's own sword and cuts his head off with his own sword. And then he takes the head back to King Saul's tent. He's been promised a wife. He's been promised all sorts of stuff. They have a good long conversation there. It doesn't relate any of that in chapter 17, but that's where chapter 18 picks up. So with chapter 18, first 4 verses here. And it came to pass, when he made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day, and would let him go no more home to his father's house. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant, because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was upon him, and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword, and to his bow, and to his girdle. So David has an audience with King Saul after he's had this great military victory, because it wasn't just Goliath. After Goliath was felled, the whole of the Israelite army chased after the Philistines, who were running away in fright, and they just slaughtered them, killing them as they're running away. So David has been the linchpin of this great military victory, and he's got this audience with the king, and they have a long conversation. We don't know exactly what all was said, but when they had made an end of speaking, it says that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David. And it's condensed here. All right, we don't know how much time the author is really relating within these 4 verses. That's not the kind of thing that happens instantly. Now, some guys we meet, We instantly hit it off. I've had that happen before. You meet some people, you look at them after 2 minutes of talking, you go, I'm getting along with this guy. No problems. I think it's a little slower for the other member of the members of the opposite sex, but for guys, every now and then you can just instantly meet somebody and say, I know that this guy and I are going to get along. What makes me just sick about these verses is what the world has tried to do with this relationship. There are people in this world who want to take this and turn it into an inappropriate relationship. Now, men have, when you find shared tastes, shared values, shared personalities, people, with these kinships, these deep down connections that every now and then just come naturally. That's what this is. But the world wants to look at it in this erotic way, in this inappropriate fashion. And it's not. This is love in its purest form. And the Hebrews recognized that relationships like this were possible, because this is not the first time that we've read about this, or even this exact phrase being used. In Genesis chapter 44, verse 30, describing Jacob and his son Benjamin, it says, Now therefore, when I come to thy servant my father, and the lad be not with us, seeing that his life is bound up in the lad's life. Now that is a father and son relationship, I'll grant you, but it's the same Hebrew phrase that's being used right there, talking about how they are knit together. There is a deep relationship here, because with Jacob and his son Benjamin, you remember Jacob had 2 wives, right? And he only liked one of them, and she only ended up giving him a couple kids. And at this point in his life, Jacob thought, well, Joseph was gone. He wrote him off a long time ago because his wicked brothers brought back this multicolored coat dipped in goat's blood and said, I'm sorry, he was lost to some beast. So now he's only got one kid by the wife that he liked, and that's Benjamin. And his soul was knit to Benjamin. Deuteronomy chapter 13, verse 6. If thy brother, the son of thy mother, or thy son, or thy daughter, or the wife of thy bosom, or thy friend, which is as thine own soul, entice thee secretly, saying, Let us go and serve other gods, which thou hast not known, thou nor thy fathers. Thunder, I didn't copy the rest of that. What's in Deuteronomy right there is talking about you serve one God and only one God. And we are not having idolatry. You remember Deuteronomy was written in the middle of the Exodus. It's talking about this. Deuteronomy means the second telling of the law of Moses. This is him reiterating everything that he's talked about already in a nice condensed fashion for them to go over. And what he's saying is, if you have family members, if you got brother-in-laws, you got a father, you got somebody that's trying to entice you to idolatry, don't do it. And it lists some pretty severe consequences for that. And in that list of people, it says, or thy friend, which is as thine own soul. Even one of these deep down buddies that you've got, one of these brotherhoods that have come about organically, even if somebody like that comes at you trying to draw you to a pagan god, don't go. And we see relationships like this, and it's, if you think back over the Old Testament, we've seen, a lot of husbands and wives so far, and it's odd to see that some of those relationships are inferior to what they're painting between 2 genuine brothers of the faith. Think back on the ones we've seen. Abraham, now he had a beautiful wife. He had Sarah, but Abraham lied about her twice while they were going into Egypt. Told Pharaoh, this is my sister, because he didn't want to get killed. And what did Pharaoh do every time? Both times. There's 2 different Pharaohs, but both times Pharaoh took her up and said, all right, I'm going to add this one to my harem. She's gorgeous. And Abraham just kind of went along with it, hoping that nothing happened. And both times God intervened in the thing. God actually struck down the house of Pharaoh with a sickness that kept them from doing any kind of thing in the whole household. And this was over a long period of time too, even to the point that the ladies in waiting there, they noticed that women weren't giving birth. So this had to be a long period of time. until they figured out what was going on. And he went to Abraham and he said, why did you do this evil thing? This is horrible. Take your wife back. This is your wife. Man, I almost really did something bad here. That was Abraham and Sarah. Later on, Abraham's wife Sarah set him on another woman, set him on Hagar. Hagar, yep, Hagar. Because she wanted kids and she couldn't have them. So she said, you go into my maidservant, have kids by her. Not a great relationship. Good, in points, There was a long relationship, definitely. And I'm sure he loved his wife. But when we start looking back over some of these, Jacob, we already mentioned him. Rachel and Leah, didn't like one of them, liked the other one. Joseph got railroaded into Egypt. His brothers gave him up for dead. And then whenever he finally has a wife and kids, and he has Manasseh and Ephraim, we don't really get a whole bunch of detail at all about his wife. Moses, when he led the people in the Exodus, he had Zipporah. That was a rocky relationship. There was a point where he, while God has called them after the burning bush and he's making his way back to Egypt, he fell sick. She figured out it was because he didn't take the time to circumcise their child. She did the job and then threw it at him and said, you are a bloody husband to me. They had a rocky relationship. And then later on, we don't know, later on they were talking about everybody's, all the rumors start going around and then the disquieting among the people about how Moses has an Ethiopian, a Cushite woman. And we don't know if that's Zipporah or if Zipporah had died at that point and he had another wife at that time, but we don't get a whole bunch of detail on some of the wives in the Old Testament. So a good argument could be made that the Jewish culture actually esteemed this bond of true brotherhood at least on equal ground, with the marital relationship, which was sacred and given by God, but at the same time, this is a wildly patriarchal society, and to find a relationship like that in somebody with whom you have so much in common would be a much firmer thing given that society, if that makes sense. That's not to say that marriage wasn't sacred or that men didn't love their wives, but genuine bonds with like-minded, strong male characters were practically more valued. 2 Samuel chapter 1, verse 26, which is on in a little bit here, it says, I am distressed for thee, my brother Jonathan. Very pleasant hast thou been unto me. Thy love to me was wonderful, passing the love of women. Again, it's not this inappropriate relationship, this horrible, stained relationship that the world wants to make it out to be. Because I have heard so many New Age preachers quote these verses and say, "This, you know exactly what's going on here." No, it's not what's going on here. It's a completely different time. Yes, it's more than the love of a woman to him, not physically, but a deeper connection. Their souls were knit together. And it was almost instantly this way with David and Jonathan. Just think about it too. David's the brave one, the young shepherd boy who just ran towards a 9-foot giant, would we say? He's about 9 foot, at the least 9 foot, maybe up to 11, ran towards him and killed him. Jonathan is the one who left with his armor bearer a couple chapters ago and said, you know what, let's go out here to Philistine garrison and see what happens. God is not limited to save by many or by few. And they killed 20 people on top of a hill and a garrison, and then set the spark that lit off the whole military conflict that drove the Philistines back, practically all by his lonesome. His armor bearer was there, his shield carrier was there. He got a few kills in too, but he started the battle, his act of faith and bravery. You can imagine those two seeing each other, and he goes, I saw you kill that giant. He's like, yeah, I heard about you on that hill. You killed like 20 people. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Did we just become best friends? I think we did. And Saul took David to his own service that day. The king wouldn't allow him to return home. So he said, no more sheep. You're not a shepherd anymore. You're coming with me on to bigger and better things. Just like it says in 1 Samuel 14, it says, and there was sore war against the Philistines all the days of Saul. And when Saul saw any strong man or any valiant man, he took him unto him. He was padding his army. Anytime Saul kept leading people into these Philistine conflicts, and anytime he saw somebody standing out, handling himself really well, somebody that just couldn't get taken down, that was coming out of it without a scratch on him, he would recruit them. He was conscripting all of the good fighters from these little skirmishes and battles that he was drumming up with the Philistines to bring them to, at the very least, be in his army, and if not that, within his own personal, like guard within his own house. So when Saul sees David do this thing, he says, don't worry about sheep anymore. You're with me. Saul made a place for him, and he kept him close at hand at all times going forward. As a fighter, yeah, he's an able-bodied fighter. Killed a lion with his own hands. Killed a 11-foot Goliath giant now. And once they got to talking, I'm sure David said at some point there, you don't remember, I used to play harp for you too. And he's like, you're a fighter and you're that guy that played harp. That's awesome. You're coming to live with me. And again, we don't take these verses to all have happened in the span of an afternoon or something. This is a period of time. Yes, ma'am.
Before David killed Goliath, didn't Saul say that he would give his daughter in marriage to whoever?
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't.
Not yet. That's in this chapter.
I know.
Why are you messing with me?
Since he killed Goliath.
It has been a while.
So
Why not immediate?
Why wasn't she already in his life?
I can't say why. I know in a little bit. When we talk about it, David's a little reluctant, and David has an underlying feeling about it, a humility within him about the whole prospect of marrying into the royal family. So either Saul didn't say, hey, here's my daughter, or he did, and David said, you know what, I'm just going to hold off on that for now. I don't know which way it went. We're not told, but put a pin in that. Give me just a second. You're all right. Hey, this whole thing, again, it's not an afternoon. It's not a couple days. It seems more like a military campaign of sorts, a period of time where David was able, he came into the employ of Saul, and he's able to prove himself over and over in like a series of continued outings and tests and skirmishes, and the initial undeniable kinship that he and Jonathan have is culminated in a covenant between the two. That's what we see in the end of those verses there. And we're not told exactly what the covenant was. Contextually, it seems, like a partnership, like brothers, militaristic partnership, with an agreement to, I'll watch your back, you watch mine, you lean against me, Forrest, and we won't have to sleep on the ground, that kind of thing. And they're going to watch each other in these military endeavors, and in life, they have the same God, the same faith, the same devotion, so they're very much the same person, almost. And in this covenant, Jonathan gives David his clothes and his armor and his weapons. And again, they take this and they taint it, and they say, oh, he's stripping down in front of it, and they make it sound inappropriate. David is a young shepherd boy, dirt poor. His father's got some money, but all David's ever done is watch sheep. And he's in the royal household now. And he's best friends with a prince. And he's out there next to the king all the time, and the king keeps sending him out to fight battles and come back, and he's next to the prince. So the prince does the nice thing. He honors him, and he gives him new clothes, new armor, new weapons, because y'all remember, there was not a whole bunch of blacksmiths around here. The Philistines had outlawed blacksmithing at the time of that initial skirmish when Jonathan went out with his armor bearer to fight the Philistines. The Israelites didn't have weapons. They kept having to go to the Philistines for all of their practical farming implements and things of that nature, and it said specifically that Saul and Jonathan were the only ones that had swords between them. David's out here fighting all of these skirmishes. He's part of the royal procession, and the boy doesn't even have good clothes, doesn't have good armor, doesn't even have a sword. Jonathan gives him these things. It's not inappropriate at all. It's what you would expect out of two people when they're so tightly knit together, and one of them says, "Oh man, you don't even have shoes? Let me get you some shoes. I got shoes. I'll get you a new shirt too. We'll get you one with the royal crest on it. I've got an extra sword. Take this sword here. Good. All right. Now you look the part." That's exactly what's going on here. Verses 5 through 9. And David went out whithersoever Saul sent him, and behaved himself wisely. And Saul set him over the men of war, and he was accepted in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. And it came to pass as they came, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, that the women came out of all cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tabrets, with joy, and with instruments of music. And the women answered one another as they played, and said, Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. And Saul was very wroth, and the saying displeased him. And he said, They have ascribed unto David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed but thousands. And what can he have more but the kingdom? And Saul eyed David from that day and forward. Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
What time?
10:30. Yeah.
I just wanted to hear the word for a little bit, man.
What's your name?
Brian.
Brian. It's a pleasure. We'll see you Sunday, Brian.
See you Sunday.
So David was a good soldier. He followed orders. Every test that is thrown at him, it says that he behaved himself wisely. And his bravery, his wisdom, his prudence, his faith, the practicality, the success that God gave him as a result of this godly character that was within him, it earned him the respect, the admiration of the soldiers over whom he had been placed. All the servants in Saul's house loved him. All the people loved him. And what's being described in verse 6, where it says, And it came to pass as they came, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistines, that the women came out of all the cities singing and dancing to meet King Saul. What's being described there is a kind of like a triumphant return. It's David after a campaign against the Philistines that followed the conflict with Goliath. But that wasn't it. There were still Philistines out there. So there's a series of battles and victories, and Saul keeps sending David out to fight and to fight for the royal household, for the Israelites. David keeps handling himself wisely, handling himself in battle well, and he comes back, and at the very end of it, it ends with them coming from this great slaughter of the Philistines. And as he rode in with his army, Saul presents himself to receive the army. He comes out of the royal house, and he's going to receive them, and it says the people went out to meet King Saul at this reception. And at this reception, the women are singing and dancing, and they're playing all sorts of musical instruments, and they sang a song. And it says in what is that verse? Verse 7, and the women answered one another as they played. So it's a song. It's a sing and repeat kind of song. It's echoing them. They sing a song. It's a verse and response. It's one group of women sing, Saul has slain his thousands. Then the others would sing in response, and David his 10,000s. And the verses would go back and forth like that. And that's the only verse we're given. But how many songs are just one line, I mean, maybe some of the New Age verses. Maybe they're just... No. But most of the things that we sing have a little more than just one verse. There's a little more meat to them. There probably was more to this. So more praise being sung to David and how handsome and brave he is. With each verse that he hears, King Saul gets angrier and angrier and angrier. And why? Because he's been told very directly by the prophet Samuel that just as he ripped the sleeve from Samuel's arm, the kingdom of Israel would be ripped from his hands and given to someone better than him, given to a brother better than he was. Now, how could Saul be hearing this and not thinking, that's the guy? Because out of everybody in the kingdom, that's the only one that's being presented as better than him, and apparently everybody thinks it. Has to be him. That's exactly what's on Saul's mind. The only higher station for David to attain at that point is the throne. He's already essentially a general, you know. David's in charge of the army. He has their ear. He's over all the servants. They all love him. Where does he go from there? He is at the height of celebrity. He is a public heartthrob. He is it. What further step is there except the throne? And so Saul eyed David from that day forward. It was a slowly and constantly, daily growing jealousy, a bitter envy that fed on Saul's insecurity, his knowledge that inevitably, at some point, it's going to happen. Someone is taking the throne from him. And it eventually grew into this deep hatred for David. Verses 10 through 13. And it came to pass that on the morrow that the evil spirit from God came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of the house. And David played with his hand as at other times, and there was a javelin in Saul's hand. And Saul cast the javelin, for he said, I will smite David even to the wall with it. And David avoided out of his presence twice. And Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him and was departed from Saul. Therefore Saul removed him from him and made him his captain over 1,000, and he went out and came in before the people. So the spirit that had oppressed Saul previously, that apparently was giving him a little bit of a break, has come back. But it's no longer, previously it was producing within him depression, bits of melancholy. It was making him just lay around all day, feeling sorry for himself and not doing a whole bunch. But now it's a much, much different effect now. When the Spirit sets in on Saul, it's making him angry. It's making him crazy. And so just like David did in the past, when that Spirit sets in, he picks up his harp and he starts to play. He's trying to soothe Saul's temper, to calm him down a bit, bring him back to normal. But this time the Spirit descends on Saul and it takes him to prophesying. And y'all remember we've talked about when they say prophesying like this, it's not that he's foretelling the future. He's not telling them things that are happening somewhere else. It's an ecstatic, aggressive speaking to David. It's a religious kind of rant. He's probably talking about God. I imagine God is in there. He's talking about having the kingdom rent from himself, somebody being brought up that's better than he is, how he deserves it, and he's the one that was anointed. It's a rant is the best way to say it. It's high emotion, loud words. He's getting up, he's gesturing, he's yelling. He's watching David run around the room with his harp, trying to calm him down, trying to play. And at some point, Saul looks down and he says, you know what, I've got a spear in my hand. Why not use it? He sees David, the object of his torment around him, and he takes aim with him at the spear and he throws it, seeking to pin David to the wall. So he's not just throwing it to scare him. It's not a warning shot. He says, I will pin him to the wall. So that's at him directly with enough force to go through him. So there's no half measures here. And he must have gone over as soon as he missed and pulled it right out of the wall because he threw it again. It says David avoided it twice. And the second time, apparently, he left the room. Yeah, I know. If you don't after twice, it's kind of your fault, isn't it? And it says Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him and was departed from Saul. He knew it. He knew God was no longer with him and was on somebody else. David was his replacement, and he knew it now. So Saul, in this, misguided effort to strengthen his own standing, had willingly brought on his own replacement into his own house, and now it seems like there's no getting rid of him. God's with him. I let him in the door. I told him you're not going back to shepherd him. I brought him into my house. Now I can't I can't kill him. He won't run away. He's here. So Saul did what he thought was best. He removed him from the court, put him in charge of soldiers, and sent him out into battle over and over and over, thinking, well, maybe he gets killed. Maybe at some point in this battle he's going to get killed. At the very least, he's not in the royal house to torment King Saul. Verses 14 through 16. And David behaved himself wisely in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. Wherefore, when Saul saw that he behaved himself very wisely, he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he went out and came in before them. So things just keep getting worse. Worse and worse for King Saul. He did the only thing he could think of to do. But there's no unforced errors here on David's part. You know, unforced errors? That's where you're out in baseball, you're in the outfield, the ball's coming straight to you. Sun's not in your eyes, there's no one around. It's just you and the ball arcing perfectly to you, and then you drop it. It's an unforced error. David doesn't have anything like that. He's behaved himself wisely in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. And don't dismiss that. Wisdom is a tremendous thing. And for someone like David, he has exhibited a tremendous amount of wisdom in how and when he has chosen to act and what he has chosen to say. Given his shepherd upbringing, that he spent most of his youth with sheep, wisdom's the kind of thing he may not have exactly had on his own. It seems like God, in being with him, has specifically gifted him with wisdom. That part of that anointing, whenever Samuel anointed him from among his brethren, was an imparting of God's wisdom to him. Proverbs chapter 2, verse 6 says, "For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding." James 1:5 says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you." And then later in James chapter 3 it says, "But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere." So the Bible tells us wisdom comes from God. So for David to behave as he does in wisdom, in great wisdom, despite whatever mess the king throws him into, he must be maintaining a very close relationship with God the whole time, because this does not seem like something he would have had on his own. And as we progress in the saga of David and Saul, we see David's wisdom is exactly what is described in James. It's pure, peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy, good fruit, all of it. What? Who? Yes, ma'am.
About how old is David during this time?
I can't say. He was a teenager when he was a shepherd.
So he's still pretty young.
Oh, he's still pretty young. Oh, yeah. No, he's still pretty young. When he presented himself on the field of battle, Goliath thought he was a dog, and he was the youngest of his brothers. I put him as a teenager whenever he presented himself on the field of battle. I don't know how long he goes about it this year, though. He's at least marrying age, because we're about to get to that. David has God's wisdom, and it made Saul all the more afraid of him. As someone with God's wisdom, that is a foe to be respected. And one of the translations I read said Saul stood in awe of him, as though to raise a hand against David was to raise a hand against the God that was backing him. And I think that's a very good way to put it. And all Israel continued to love David because he became to them the face of the nation, their de facto leader. While the king was hiding away in his royal house, He is the one that they would see leading the army out and coming back victorious, and leading the army out and coming back victorious over and over and over. Verses 17 through 21. And Saul said to David, Behold my elder daughter Merab. Her will I give thee to wife. Only be thou valiant for me, and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul said, Let not mine hand be upon him, but let the hand of the Philistines be upon him. And David said unto Saul, Who am I, and what is my life or my father's family in Israel, that I should be son-in-law to the king? But it came to pass at the time when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, that she was given unto Adriel the Mahalathite to wife. And Michal, Saul's daughter, loved David. And they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. And Saul said, I will give him her, that she may be a snare to him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. Wherefore Saul said to David, Thou shalt this day be my son-in-law in the one of the twain. So the time has come for Saul to make good on a promise that had been previously made, and we don't know how long ago. These little skirmishes, these battles back and forth, that's not like a leave in the morning and come back in the evening kind of thing. And if he's doing a whole bunch of them, this may be a number of years here. But whether Saul postponed it or David denied it out of humility, we don't know. It's just now being brought up. But Saul tells David, You're doing a great job, whole bunch of military victories, love what you're doing, keep it up. Keep fighting these battles for me. It says, Be thou valiant for me and fight the Lord's battles, and I'll give you Merab, my eldest daughter, to wife. And it's positioned as a way to keep David going out to fight against the Philistines. Because at some point, right? At some point, he can't survive every battle he goes into. Those ancient battles were nasty. Nasty battles. People getting cleaved and stabbed and run through. It was horrible. He can't survive every single one of those. So Saul's best plan right now is to just keep sending him out over and over and over. And I think what is especially sad here is that David may well be aware that that's what Saul's doing too. Because he's already tried to pin him against the wall twice. Not the first time. Well, he's trying to kill him by proxy. Like, I won't dirty my hands with it, but I'll let the Philistines do it. And David is wise. He's got to be picking up on the underlying motivation here. He might not like it, but he recognizes the tactic, and he remembers it because later he employs it himself with Uriah the Hittite. That's a number of years later, but when he sees Bathsheba, realizes she has a husband, he says, y'all go put him on the front lines, go attack the walls, and then withdraw from him. So David is a little wiser than Saul. He doesn't leave it up to chance like this. He's not just going to say, put Uriah in some elite unit and have him going out over and over and over. No. He takes all the guesswork out of it. He says, y'all go up to the front line, attack the walls, and then pull back. But here, Saul says, I'm going to give you Merab, my daughter. You just keep fighting for me. And David declines it as respectfully and humbly as he's able to do. And part of it is he doesn't want to give Saul the leverage over him. He'll still do it, but he doesn't want Saul saying, you have to do this. Part of it is him saying, I won't let him force me into fighting these battles over and over and over just because he knows he's given me a wife. But part of it is as well because he feels like he is genuinely unworthy of the honor. He says, who am I? How is my life worth so much that I would ever rise to be son-in-law to the king? I can't marry her because I don't deserve her. And it's a good move on David's part. It's a wise move because if he had taken the hand of the eldest daughter, it's all speculation, but who knows what Saul would have had him do? I've just given you my eldest daughter. Let's invade the Philistine capital, straight to the heart. You're going to lead a 2-man unit, but I've just given you my daughter. I want you to go out there and do this for me. Again, that's all speculation, but David doesn't want to give him that leverage. So David humbly declines. And then after a while, someone comes along and Saul changes his mind and gives Merab over to another man. Now, why? More than likely it's money. More than likely this guy came in and promised a huge dowry for the hand of Merab. We assume that because in just a few verses here, when Saul is enticing David again to try and marry one of his daughters, he assures him he doesn't want a dowry. So this first marriage with Merab sets some kind of precedent here about a dowry being exchanged, and that's probably part of David's reluctance as well. And there's some thought that being promised Merab and then having her withdrawn and given to another man is a great affront to David. It's like a great injustice and an insult that this daughter was offered and then yanked out from under him and given to another man, especially since David was so much in the public eye and was so publicly esteemed and followed. One commentator went as far as to say that this underhanded switch, angered God and doomed that marriage, because true enough in 2 Samuel, as we see, as this saga progresses, the children of Merab and her husband, they're all killed. It doesn't end well for this family, for this whole union here. But then Saul finds out that his daughter Michal loves David and has for some time, because they mentioned that in the last chapter. After he came in and slew Goliath, it talks about how Michal loved him. And that news pleased Saul because it renewed the possibility of forcing David out into battle again and again and again, that he might eventually be slain by the Philistines. Verses 22 through 26. And Saul commanded his servants, saying, "Commune with David secretly, and say, Behold, the king hath delight in thee, and all his servants love thee. Now therefore be the king's son-in-law." And Saul's servants spake those words in the ears of David, and David said, "Seemeth it to you a light thing to be a king's son-in-law, seeing that I am a poor man and lightly esteemed?" And the servants of Saul told him, saying, "On this manner spake David." And Saul said, "Thus shall ye say to David, The king desireth not any dowry, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines, to be avenged of the king's enemies." But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. And when his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law, and the days were not expired. So Saul goes to his employees, his servants, to try and influence David, because maybe his guard's down a little bit if he's not talking directly to the king. Maybe he'll be a little more upfront if he's talking to the servants. Maybe we'll get to the root of why he's declining this great honor, or maybe even he liked the servants more than Saul, and he's going to talk to them more, and he'll actually listen to them, and they have some sway. Or whatever. The king's servants go to David, and they say, "Hey, the king delights in you." So you got to think David can probably tell that something's up, because this is the same guy that keeps sending me out to the hottest areas of the country, and he's tried to pin me to the wall twice with a javelin here. So they open up, their opener is "the king delights in you, and you know we all love you. Why don't you marry Michal? Why don't you marry that sweet girl?" What was it's the Godfather? He's like, "Hey, Michal, why don't you marry that girl?" That's old. David replies to them, he says, This is not a small thing that you would have me do. This is not this marriage into the king's house, into the royal. This is not small. And he says, yeah, I'm from a humble background, and he's never sought to be the king's son-in-law. But apparently, one of the biggest reasons he's reluctant here is because he's poor. So I don't have a dowry to offer a king for the hand of his daughter, and Merab just got married to Mahathalite, something like that. I can't remember where the guy's from. It's something like that. And that dude had a whole bunch of money. The dowry is exactly what the king is expecting. I don't have that. It's expensive to get married, and it's really expensive to get married to the daughter of a king. And David doesn't want to insult the king or his bride by scraping together whatever meager sum he can to marry her. So when the servants return word to Saul and say, "This is what David said," Saul sends them back to David. So David has to know something's up now. They started out Saul saying, "Go and secretly talk to David." But if they're exchanging replies back and forth, he has to know they're talking directly to King Saul. But they've come back to him with this answer. They said, don't worry about it. The king doesn't even want a dowry. He wants 100 foreskins of the Philistines. Now, presumably, because he didn't want David to go out and kill just anybody, it has to be one of the uncircumcised heathen in order to prove that it's actually what he's doing, is going out and actually killing their enemy here. Saul says, I've got money. I don't need any more money. What I do want, though, is to stir things up with the Philistines. So, 100 foreskins. That's the dowry. And when the servants told that bit to David, that's all he needed to hear. He's in. It pleased him well to take the offer. It wasn't the conflict. It wasn't the fighting. None of that. This is a way for him to actually get married. He probably loves Michal too. She's at least caught his eye. It pleased him well for this in exchange of a dowry. And apparently there was a clock on the offer too, because at the very end of verse 26 it says, it pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law, and the days were not expired. So apparently King Saul said, you know what, tell him I only want 100 Philistine foreskins. I don't want a dowry. Tell him he's got 2 days to make up his mind on whether he wants to do this or not. And David thinks on it for a little bit. And you know what, pleases me well to do this. I'll go kill some Philistines for you, no problem. Love to be in the king's house now because it's not going to cost me any money, and I've still got plenty of time to make the decision. Verses 27 through 30. Oh, this is it. Wherefore David arose and went, he and his men, and slew of the Philistines 200 men. And David brought their foreskins, and they gave them in full tale to the king, that he might be the king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him Michal, his daughter, to wife. And Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. And Saul was yet the more afraid of David, and Saul became David's enemy continually. Then the princes of the Philistines went forth, and it came to pass after they went forth that David behaved himself more wisely than all the servants of Saul, so that his name was much set by. So David is excited, to say the least, to win the hand of Saul's daughter, Michal. He didn't just go out and kill 100 Philistines. He went out and he killed 200 Philistines. And they presented themselves, and don't miss this either, because this is hilarious to me. David arose and went, he and his men slew of the Philistines 200 men, and David brought their foreskins, and they gave them in full tale to the king. He says, let me tell you exactly how this went down. This is the in full tale, T-A-L-E. He told them the whole story. I just killed and circumcised 200 heathens for your daughter's hand. Let me tell you all about it. I know, it's the kind of thing you want to be able to tell your grandkids about one day. You know, let me tell you how I met your mother. Or
Back in my day.
Back in my day. Y'all are lucky. Y'all met on the internet. Back in my day. So Saul gave David Michal, his daughter, to be his bride. And even in this attempt to lure David into even more danger, the Lord was still with David, and Saul could see it. He could see that he was still behaving wisely. He's still having military victory. And not only that, Saul's daughter truly loved David. David's getting all of Saul's family on his side. He's got his son Jonathan. Their souls are knit together. He's got his daughter, Michal. Almost had Merab. Dodged a bullet there, but he's got his other daughter. Saul's lost half his family to being in love with David. And because of it, Saul hated him all the more, and his will was continually set against him because of the fear and the jealousy of being inevitably replaced. It's a hard thing to do. I've heard tale of it's Caterpillar. We had a guy in our office in Caterpillar about a year ago talking about how they've brought in his replacement, and in order to get his severance package, he has to train his replacement before they're forcing him out. It's inevitable that he's leaving. He can't stand the guy, and he was conflicted too, because it wasn't a bad guy, but the situation has set him at odds with this person, because he's going to be inevitably replaced by him. And it says then at the very end, when the princes of the Philistines went forth to battle, and Saul, David, and just a second. There we go. It says when the princes of the Philistines went forth to battle, David and Saul further, and again they're battling right now. I had a quotation here, and I had to go like, wait, why did I copy and paste that there? The Philistines have moved on against Saul and David. They're still fighting, even though it culminated in this great slaughter. They've been beaten down tremendously. But you know what's changed right now? They heard that David got married. And you know what happens under Jewish law? Deuteronomy 24, verse 5 says, when a man hath taken a new wife, he shall not go out to war. Neither shall he be charged with any business, but he shall be free at home 1 year, and shall cheer up his wife which he hath taken. They're thinking maybe the star quarterback for this team is not going to be out in the next 6 games. Let's go ahead and attack. But David doesn't sit out. David keeps going back out to war, keeps going and fighting for King Saul here. David still succeeded, still shows himself to be wiser than all of Saul's officials, making Saul hate him all the more. And that's chapter 18. Heating up, isn't it?